welcome to Go Terran TV. This is Dr. T, PhD, the prodigy of sports psychology, and today I wanted to bring you a very special episode. As many of you know, recently I just finished and completed a 10-week data analysis edition. It was a playlist that you could find on my website as well as my YouTube channel, and it covered the basic research study that I had completed and the condensed version of data analysis, which was produced into the Journal Performance Psychology as a peer-reviewed article. So that was a lot of fun, and over reflection and thinking about this, as I just returned back from Grand Canyon University and being in the faculty commencement for the very first time, and also having my very first doctoral learner successfully graduate and earn her PhD, I thought about something with these video blogs as I wanted to continue on and just share a little bit and give you some information from my own academic kind of background and continuing education, because I found this to be very fun. So today, if you are watching this and you've never watched one of my Go Terran videos in the past, I wanted to bring you a special feature edition and discuss something that happened about 2.5 years ago as I record this. This is from May 2021. A fellow colleague at GCU, Dr. Sherry Lawrence, was very gracious and generous in inviting me to talk to her class of PhD candidates and kind of share my experience from that perspective. Now, if you think about May 2021, that is actually in the process of having my dissertation being read by the Dean of Grand Canyon University and earning my final last milestone step before actually completing and publishing my dissertation and becoming a PhD myself in performance psychology. So that was a wonderful time, and again, as my academic career continues to grow and flourish, I've done many other things in the past 2.5 years. Some of you know that I'm currently a chair with GCU with roughly 6 doctoral learners, and I've been doing that for about 1.5 years now. I've also served as a content expert and continuing to do so for about 6 students as well who are trying to get their doctoral degree at Grand Canyon University, and also in the meantime, most recently, being a doctoral chair with the University of Arizona's global campus. And so that's been exciting as well. So many things that I've been exploring with my academic prowess and expertise as I continue to, of course, bring that to implementing in my personal training career. And so, again, just really excited to continue my growth as a personal trainer, a teacher, a sports psychologist, and just delivering everything that I can to you right here on all these wonderful blogs. So as a treat, as I mentioned, today we're going to go back in time and go to May 2021, and in the process of me graduating and successfully completing my doctoral program, talking to Dr. Sherry Lawrence's class of PhD candidates and kind of giving them some advice and suggestions and tips. So Dr. Lawrence asked me to be on Zoom and talk to her students and kind of just give them some guidance. What worked for me, what didn't work for me, what to avoid, but also what to concentrate on and focus, and how to get there. How do you get to the finish line of becoming a doctoral candidate and also earning your doctoral degree? And that's what I'll be discussing here on Zoom as I go back in time and I share this with you. So I'm so excited to deliver this to you here today on this very special edition of Go Terran TV. And also, if this is your very first time, I'd like to invite you to please make sure to like this video and leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you can see some other wonderful videos right here brought to you exclusively by Go Terran Health and Fitness. And I want to remind everyone out there that with Go Terran Health Fitness, it's your time, it's your investment, and it's your life. And without any further ado, here comes that video from Zoom with Dr. Lawrence's class from May 2021, talking to the other GCU PhD candidates.
Welcome, everyone, all who are here and all who are listening later. Today is a special day. We have a special guest, Taryn Hoff, who is a successful, I guess I can't say graduate yet, almost graduate of the doctoral program. He has successfully defended his dissertation and is in sort of the last kind of mopping up process before we get to officially call him Dr. Hoff. That will be soon, very soon. And so I've asked him to come and basically just give a few minutes about himself, his dissertation journey. Taryn is a little bit unusual in that he's gone very fast through the process, so he may have some interesting insights about how that works. And then we can all ask him questions. I'm sure that many of you have questions that you'd like to ask somebody who's gone through the process, and so that's why he's here. And I thank you, Taryn, for showing up, and doing this. This is time out of your life. And so I definitely appreciate it. And I know all my students do too. So thank you.
No, thank you, Dr. Lawrence. And it's a pleasure. I appreciate you having me on. And I'm honored, in fact, to just take a few minutes here and share, I guess, any help that I can give. And speaking of time, like you mentioned, I'll just throw this out here. It's kind of ironic. May 10th, 2018, exactly 3 years ago today, I was just looking that that was my first day in GCU, actually, first day of my first class. So it's pretty cool. Full circle here. So exactly 3 years since I started the first class here at GCU. And, again, as Dr. Lawrence said, my name's Taryn. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, not too far from Dr. Lawrence, in fact. But I own my own personal training company. It's called Go Taryn Health and Fitness. And basically, I'll just tell you real quick before I just jump into it here. I went for my doctoral degree because personal training here, especially in Atlanta, is very competitive. And I was just trying to think about ways to differentiate myself from every other trainer in Atlanta and kind of develop a unique niche. And so one of the things I wanted to work on was becoming known as one of the most academic personal trainers in the greater Atlanta area. So what I was thinking, Dr. Lawrence, if maybe I take about 5 to 10 minutes here just to kind of go through my own doctoral journey of what I like to call the good, the bad, and the ugly. I won't spend too much time on the good and the bad because I think that everyone on the call right now could probably relate. So for example, the good is, why are we doing the doctoral journey? And I just told you a couple of reasons of myself, but probably all of us, I'm guessing it's probably some form of self-accomplishment or personal satisfaction, professional satisfaction. What other things are there good at GCU? There's awesome instructors like Dr. Lawrence at GCU, by the way, which I'll throw this out there. Dr. Lawrence, of the 3 years I was at GCU with all of the classes, you're the first and only instructor that gave us some kind of extra platform like this to be able to do what we're doing and networking with other students on some kind of webinar via Zoom, which is terrific. So I commend you for that because that was greatly helpful. So I've been there for the other people on the call right now, where she had, I think it was Dr. Russ Mays, if I'm not mistaken, that was on in my shoes, kind of where he was just finishing up. GCU being an amazing school. We all know about the credentials and the accreditation for GCU. And of course, it's a great way to network. So having said all that, that's kind of the good. And then the bad was kind of, maybe again, can I relate to others on the call? Let's face it, costs a lot of money, right? Any doctoral program probably would. You invest a lot of time. I'm sure everybody on here is not only invest a lot of time, but also knows the word sacrifice, which I'll get into in just a bit. Personal sacrifice, professional sacrifice. Again, more on that in just a minute. And again, hard and challenging. Every week having a paper or do every other week or have every day going through a DQ. And some of the frustrations that we've all been on, getting dinged on grades or problems with an instructor or problems getting our DQs or our papers in. So I think, again, just kind of, I could spend time on those components, but I think I was thinking that if I was in the shoes of everyone on the call right now, what would I want? If, especially, again, I think everyone on the call taking your time out here to just kind of be on this call, I want to get into the ugly, because if I was on the call, I'd want someone at the end line of this marathon coming on telling me what were some of the greatest obstacles and hardest challenges, because I think that would be most beneficial. I thought about it. I'm like, how can I be of some use today on today's call? Well, I think I want to go into what were some of the ugliest things that I went through and what were the solutions to those hard obstacles? How did I get past that? So for me personally, I'm not going to go back to residencies because I know that mostly everybody on the call would assume is probably either gone through second residency or almost there. But what I don't want to go through is post RES 880, the class that we're in right now, developing the prospectus with Dr. Lawrence, because that's kind of where things got ugly for me. And so here's what I mean by that. The last year for me, about a year ago, May 2020, is when I was finishing RES 880 and I was done with my prospectus and I was transitioning into the proposal. So there's about 7 things that I just wanted to cover real quick to tell you that were my struggles and how I got through them. So first, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, was sacrifice. For me, for the past, not only last year, but the previous years, I got up at 3 a.m. every day. And that includes weekends, unfortunately. And I just got to doing that because, as we know, it's both a personal sacrifice and professional sacrifice. But I want to tell you, for a solution, you can do that. I don't recommend, if you can do it elsewise, don't do it. But we have to find times in the day to be able to get this stuff done, to read through the books, the journals, and research and all that. There's only 24 hours in the day, and we need time to sleep. We need time for, again, your work and also your personal life, your family. So I'm strongly recommending that you organize, again, we can all manage time. I'm not going to go through that. But for me, I think it's really important to share. Please do not sacrifice your professional life, meaning your business, your work. And please don't sacrifice your personal life, meaning taking time from your family or your loved ones. For example, Sundays were sacred for me. I never did any work at all on Sundays. I just didn't even touch that day. I was thinking I need one day of rest because I work full time and I'm at work Monday through Saturday, early AM to sometimes late PM. So that's what I would just say on sacrifice. Number 2, most recently, I'm in form and formatting. Like Dr. Lawrence said, that I'm in the 99% phase of my doctoral journey. In other words, I'm of the 24 mile of the 26 mile marathon right now, trying to get to the last mile. My problem was word styles, and I will say right now, I had no idea what word styles was. I thought I was pretty proficient with Microsoft Office, Microsoft Word, which we're using, but for the prospectus to the proposal to the dissertation, I didn't touch word styles because I'll be honest with you, I never remember going over it. Now, as we know, being part of a GCU or any doctoral program, we're supposed to be self-directed. We're supposed to teach ourselves a lot of things. So for me, that was one area that I neglected. I remember Dr. Mall mentioning it just briefly. That's who my chair is. Dr. Mall, my chair, had told me, make sure you look at this YouTube video on form and formatting and you'll get it. And I was like, okay, whatever. I'll get to it when I can. I got enough stuff. And when my paper came back the first time from form and formatting, which is level 7 where I'm at right now, I had a lot of problems. By the way, this is past my dissertation defense, and I'll get to that too. But my issue for myself was I didn't use word styles. Now, some of you on the call might have, be shaking your head saying, gosh, I can't believe he was able to get that far doing that. For me, I just did it my way, and that was not a good thing to do. So I strongly recommend, as a solution, get familiar with word styles. If you're not right now, if you're having problems with your table of contents and hyperlinks and things of that nature, talk to Thinking Storm. If you already are, go on YouTube. There's free videos on there. Or if you want to get it done a little bit faster and expedite things, maybe pay for a professional to help you out and just do a quick 1-hour seminar on word style. So important. That'll fix your problems so you won't have the issues I did when you get to form and formatting. Make sure your table of contents, list of tables, list of figures are all hyperlinked accordingly. If they're not, you'll have the problems I ran into. And I would have saved so much time had I gone ahead and done that. Number 3, the transition from the prospectus to the proposal. My problem was, and I mentioned this to Dr. Lawrence on my dissertation defense call, so this might sound like a repeating myself, Dr. Lawrence, but I wanted to share with the other learners, getting started with chapter 3, the way that when I finished my prospectus and I jumped into my proposal with Dr. Mall, the first step was to write chapter 3. And so that's where we started, was to start to write the methodology section of my proposal. My problem was I did not understand my own research study. My methodologist, who's Dr. Smith, Daniel Smith, was returning my papers to me and saying, what do you mean by that? I don't understand your research question. I don't get your recruitment. What do you mean by your data collection? And I was responding to him saying, I don't know. It's a good question. So my problem was I didn't understand my study. In layman's terms, if I took my proposal and I showed it to a friend or someone who didn't know anything about research, they would look at it like it's Greek, and I don't blame them. And I would probably show it to a doctoral learner or any instructor, and they would look at it and they would shake their head and say, what is this? And I couldn't explain it myself. That's my problem. My fault was I didn't understand it. I didn't do a good job of sitting down, and I was just going too fast. As Dr. Lawrence said, I was on the fast track program for Dr. Mall, so I just want to get things done. I didn't spend enough time to appreciate how hard that first step of writing your proposal was. So my solution on that is explain your study to someone else who's not in school and see if they even understand it. And if they do, then you're on a good track. Because had I done that, I probably would have saved some time there too. Then get another peer or learner or someone else at GCU to read it and say, does this make sense to you? I mean, in layman's terms, do you understand what my research study is asking? Then you'll understand it. Because again, if we skip that step, you'll end up like me, wasting a lot of time and getting just frustrated and pounding your head on a wall over and over. Number 4, IRB. You'll get to that step soon, I'm pretty sure, most of everyone on the call. I had issues on this step. I had issues getting past this step. In fact, I had probably about 2 to 3 weeks worth of lost time on this step. Now, my main problem was my data source, Amazon Mechanical Turk, and I'll get to that in just a few seconds too. But my problem was I was presenting my study to IRB, which we'll all have to do, and they were rejecting it. They didn't understand it. Same thing, kind of like, I don't get this. Why can't you show me step-by-step that you have your informed consent form? Why can't you show me that your link here on your Amazon Mechanical Turk that you're using for your software, I should be able to, when I'm talking about me as an IRB person was telling me, I should be able to click on that, show me why this isn't working. So I had to get my chair, Dr. Mall, involved. We had to set up a conference call. And this took a lot of time out before the holidays. I feel like I might have been able to save some time and expedite things and get there quicker. But Dr. Mall, myself, and all 3 of us were on the call, and we were just like, okay, here's how this works. Because what I found out is that Amazon Mechanical Turk was not a software that was familiar with GCU, where they were using that a lot. I think that SurveyMonkey instead was a platform that most learners were using. So this might have been a little newer for some of the IRB people, and we did get through that. So my solution is that to that is, whatever you're going to be using to collect your data, make sure before you get to IRB, set time aside to contact someone at IRB directly. They are very helpful. In fact, they have an IRB help desk email, and that's the quickest way. They get back to you within 24 hours. They got back to me less than 24 hours. Email them ahead of time, be proactive and say, hey, I'm about to make it to IRB. I'm about to submit my proposal here and get through this step. Can you please make sure you see any red flags? They're very good and helpful. And then also talk with your chair too before you get to IRB, because that way, if you know that IRB is okay with it, then you get to that step, then hopefully you should be able to get past that level as well. Data collections, number 5 for me. The big section here for myself. My study was directly impacted by the pandemic. Time-wise, here's where I was at. On my proposal, before I was going to IRB for my data collection, originally, when I came back from my second residency, I was going to go to fitness centers and go to gyms and go to recruit my participants before I was going to use Amazon Mechanical Turk. I was going to do that because that was the way I was going to incentivize and recruit participants. I was going to say, hey, I'm a doctoral learner. I need people like you. In my study, I use millennials. I was going to go get some millennials from gyms and say, I need you to come do my study for me. I'll give you whatever it was, $5-10 just to fill out the survey real quick. But I'll also put you in a raffle to win a $100 gift card or what have you. And that plan just blew up in flames because the pandemic happened, and at least here in Atlanta, all of the gyms closed. So I couldn't do that at all. That was out the window. I just go back to square one and be like, okay, what do I do now? But the good thing is this turned into a great thing for me for this program. Here's why. One of my personal training clients who's a millennial told me when I was looking on SurveyMonkey and trying to get recruit participants, he had mentioned to me, he said, why don't you use Amazon Mechanical Turk? And I was like, what is that? And he said, well, they'll basically recruit your participants for you in a pretty minimal, affordable price. I said, wow. I said, that sounds like a hell of an idea. And so I went ahead and checked into it. He kind of gave me a crash course of how it works. And basically, we were able to use that. And so I was able to get my participants very cost effective and very quickly. I got all 50 of my millennials in less than a week. And out of those 50, I contacted 10 directly, and I offered them each $40 cash. And each one of them accepted it. And I was able to get them in another 2 to 3 weeks scheduled for interviews. And I got it done in less than a month for that step, that big data collection step. That was huge for me. What did it cost me? Probably roughly, if I do the math and the numbers, it probably cost me somewhere between $700 to $800. But if you think about it, that's a lot less than having to pay another $2,000 for an extension course or a lot of time that you might save too. Because there's companies I found out that, and as people on the call probably know,
You can pay $2,000 or $3,000 to a recruitment company and they'll get you your study. But if you want to do it a little bit more cost effective, I strongly recommend checking out Amazon MTurk. And then another solution, if that doesn't work, or if you need some other help, get participants from social media groups like Facebook. I learned people are driven by money. If you go out there and you are looking for a certain criteria for your inclusion criteria, put it on Facebook or whatever social media platform and tell them you will pay them cash or whatever, Venmo. That's what I did in my case. I was just directly paying cash. I just gave up the gift card idea and the raffle. I just said, I'm just going to pay everybody cash that I get from my final 10 for my participants. Final last 2 steps, and then I'm done. I promise. I'm sorry, I'm going a little long-winded here. Number 6 and number 7, my proposal defense and respectively my dissertation defense. First of all, my proposal defense. My solution is real easy on that one. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. Just do it ad nauseum. Go in front of the mirror, go in front of a computer, and just rehearse, practice yourself, time yourself. Because every time I did it for myself, I kept slipping up. I kept looking at the clock saying, God, I'm too long-winded in doing my proposal defense. Or, oh, I don't understand. If someone asks me this question, why did you choose qualitative descriptive instead of quantitative, or et cetera? I wanted to make sure when I did my proposal defense to just keep saying it and just spitting out the rhetoric so that I understood by the time that it came that I had every scenario in my mind. And I said, okay, I'm going to get this thing. I'm going to nail it. I don't care what questions they ask me. I'm ready. I just felt so confident on the thing. So not overconfident, but just confident. So you know your thing. And then again, back to dissertation defense. I felt lucky on this. I was lucky on my dissertation defense because I felt very confident about my dissertation all along. And when that point came, when I got my proposal approved, I felt like the day coming for the dissertation defense. I never got scared of that. So I'm going to tell everyone on the call, don't get worried about that. Besides, that's not the last step, as you know. Even though I've gotten past that step, I still have to get past the form and formatting step. The solution on the solution is the same for the dissertation defense as the proposal defense. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. But again, be prepared to answer some questions. Here's another thing too, for example. If you looked at my study and you saw my limitations and my weaknesses, I put them all out there. For example, like limitations were the researcher me was inexperienced, or I was limited to a qualitative descriptive design, or I was limited to using my certain data sources that I use. Whatever they are, highlight those, cover them in depth. And for me, I'll tell you this. This is what I think helped me in my dissertation defense. And by the way, Dr. Lawrence was my AQR reviewer. I specifically went through all my weaknesses and spent some more time on them because I felt like I was going to get questioned on some of my weaknesses and some of my limitations. So what I did was I covered those in detail. And then while I was presenting, by the way, my dissertation defense, I even said, you know what? I could have made this study a little better too in some other ways. And so, for example, it was one of the things I mentioned earlier. I could have done a better job of preparation for chapter 3. I could have, my poor methodologist had to sit there and he had to go through and look at my study, not understanding it when I didn't even understand it. And I explained that. And then secondly, in my case, my dissertation defense, I felt like I was too pushy and assertive to my research participants, my crew, because when I reached out to them on Amazon Mechanical Turk, I said, hey, I got $40 for you. You need to answer. Give me an answer by 12 p.m. tomorrow. I was unreasonable probably. And I was typing and emailing and texting. And I was like, you better be, no call, no show. You're not going to get your money. And I just kept doing that because I was pressured. I felt like, I was just pushing. So if I could do it all over again, I probably wouldn't have been that so driven and over aggressive, so to speak. So anyway, that's my ugly in summary. Couple of things I will mention at residency. I'm sure all of you heard either Dr. Schmidt or Dr. Hadley, one of the others, probably go over, make sure that you know this thing through and through. This all, by the way, too, does cover everything you need for your headings and your subheadings. And when I was mentioning word styles, I didn't go through this like I should have, but it's in here. The answers are in the book. And then Dr. Mall helped me. She was, again, my chair on my thematic analysis, great book. So if any of you in here are doing any kind of thematic analysis, in my case, I was doing a qualitative study, get to know what that is because it's Greek to all of us. I mean, I still am struggling to understand what it means in coding and some of the other resources out there. But there's things I didn't even cover in this quick kind of summary that I think really helped me out. One of them I think it's called Miro.com, MIRO.com. For those of you that are doing thematic analysis, coding, and trying to create themes. So I'll shut up now. I'm sorry. I know I went a little bit longer than 5 or 10 minutes. So, but again, thanks for my time here. I appreciate it.
No need. You're the star, Taryn. Thanks. Okay, so I'm assuming that many of you have questions. I've got a couple in my pocket. I have one in particular I want to make sure that I ask if nobody else asks it. And I have a few other questions that are just sort of in my pocket, but what I'd like is for students to ask their questions. What is it that you want to know?
Can I ask a question about the writing styles? Because I'm not familiar with what you're talking about. So obviously I haven't done it or heard of it and probably need it. But is it a subsection of Microsoft Office? What is it? What are you talking about?
Dr. Lawrence, do you want me to shoot for that one?
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, you probably know a lot more about it now.
Here's the thing. To answer your question, I didn't know anything about that. Honestly, even past my dissertation defense. It's called Word Styles. It's on Microsoft Word. I didn't know that you're supposed to be using that throughout the whole process. I'll be honest with you. I'm going to be very, very candid. I never had a class or an instructor where I remember that we covered that using the Word style. So if you open up Microsoft Word and you open up your, it's a tab, depending on what version you use, whether you use, PC or Apple. But if you use Microsoft Word or Word for Mac, if you go in there and you go on the home page and the home tab, there's tabs at the top. And one of them on the right side is your, it's called Styles Pane. Look for that. That's the name of it. When you open up Styles Pane. So for example, you know how like when you're on your document and your introduction is big and bold at the very top left justified, that's heading level 1. Underneath that, you'll have a little lower font. And there we go. Okay, thank you, Dr. Lawrence. So
I'm sharing your dissertation.
Yeah. So I think
you're talking, about these styles, correct?
Yeah, that's it. And that I'll be honest with you, I didn't do any of that up until very recently with the form and formatting, because the level 7 level 7 reviewers were really hitting me hard on that, because everything was out of whack. My table of contents, my list of figures, my list of tables. So I strongly recommending double checking those and updating and toggling the field to make sure that they update, because I never did that. And I just did not know that we were supposed to be doing that, to be honest with you. That's my fault.
I see it all the time. The table of contents will say something like error or,
right.
Whatever. And
yeah, exactly.
Because chapter 1, introduction to the study, should be based, it should just auto-populate. So this table of contents should auto-populate if you formatted your dissertation correctly. Because down here, let's see if I could scroll to chapter 1. There we go. This should auto-populate right into your table of contents if you use the right style. I'm going to guess this might be the wrong one. This is your pre-defense version, so this may not have been formatted correctly. I have no idea.
Yeah, I think there it's okay, Dr. Lawrence.
Okay.
But it's when you get further in, because see, that was already done by the template. Anything in the template like that, I didn't change the style. But for example, if I went into another subheading, like most of my problems are heading 3 and heading 4. So that's basically where, for example, where you bold it and you italicize it, or you bold it and it's in the same line where it goes lesser of a heading. That was my issue, and I didn't understand that. But that's in the APA manual. There's a whole section of levels, like heading levels, heading 1, 2, 3,
this
4.
This is heading 1, and this is heading 2.
That's heading 2, correct.
I don't know if I could find a heading 3. This is a heading 3.
Correct. Those are heading 3s. Now those should be heading 3s, and I don't know now. They're probably not on that. Like you said,
normal. Yeah. Oops,
right.
I just changed it.
Yeah. So for me, I never played with the headings. All I did was just bold it and or italicize it where necessary. But I didn't know you're supposed to use the actual styles. I had no clue about that.
So if your formatting's messed up, then at some point you have to go back and fix it. And if it's an entire dissertation full of messed up formatting, then it takes a while to fix. Yes. So if you just do it right from the beginning, that's so much better.
Correct. Right.
So how do I stop share? There we
Thank
go.
you.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And so there's apparently a video that Dr. Mall gave you, Taryn. And so if that's really useful, maybe you could forward that to me at some point, and I'll post it in the classroom. So for people who
Yeah.
want to get familiar with that video.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. Definitely.
I have another question about the MTurk, whatever that was. I mean, you're recommending that we use it, but you're saying that the IRB had problems understanding it. Do you think that if we were to use it, they're becoming maybe more familiar with it over time?
Good question too. Yeah, I think honestly that it worked out for me because it really saved a lot of time. I know that a lot of people use SurveyMonkey, and whatever way you use, like for your recruiting of your participants, again, you could use social media or snowball sampling by asking friends of friends of friends and go that route. To answer it, I mean, I guess, MTurk was so effective with just getting recruits fast. So if in the interest of time, if you're looking to just get this done quicker, they might be more beneficial. But if you submit it through IRB, you're right. They probably do now more understand because now they've been through it. Dr. Mall, my chair, was telling me that there's been more students and learners who are using MTurk, so they are getting more familiar with it. And I think even Dr. Mall recommended that there be some kind of process or system put together for IRB to really understand what MTurk is, so that way when learners are submitting it, because, for example, I didn't say this in my little spiel, with SurveyMonkey, what IRB wants to see is, okay, where is your link? I want to click on that link for your informed consent, and it pops open to a new window and it says, okay, yes, I agree to your informed consent. MTurk, there's no way to do that, unfortunately. There's no way to put a page to where you click yes or no, yes, I do this informed consent, and it pops up to a new page. So when we had that issue, I told IRB, I asked MTurk, I went back to them and I went back and forth. I said, can you guys do this? And they said, no, there's no way to do that. The closest thing that worked was I put an informed consent form with a radio button, yes or no. I had to learn HTML a lot, so I recommend getting with someone who knows HTML with a radio button that says yes or no. And so if they click the radio button, then that's good enough because they hit submit. And then what MTurk gives you is a spreadsheet and an output file that shows, like, say, Taryn, as a participant, took this and clicked yes on the informed consent, and there's a saved, streamlined output on an Excel spreadsheet that shows that. So you're safe. Basically, I think IRB just wants to make sure that they cover themselves, that there's a way that they can go back and say, well, where can you show me and demonstrate that they knew about that informed consent and they clicked yes to it. So we kind of had to reinvent the wheel on that, so to speak. Right. Yeah.
And thankfully you had a chair who could manage that process,
Yeah. Right.
Those of you who, have gone through residencies, and, probably most of you have met Dr. Mall if you've been to a residency. She's really on top of things. She's like, she knows everybody at GCU.
Right.
She's on a first name basis with everybody, including the IRB, and people listen to her. She's a pioneer of a lot of the stuff. I mean, she's the one who made the PowerPoint prospectus template. And before that, the 10 strategic points, those were all Dr. Mall. So she's kind of a pioneer in a lot of things. And so people tend to listen to her. And when, Dr. Mall says, IRB, you need to have a process for this, people are going to start using MTurk and you got to figure this out. They're going to listen. And so I don't know if they actually have, gotten a process yet, but I'd be willing to bet that they have, or they're working on it.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Mm-hmm. Very, very true.
Well, Taryn, I had a question, and this is based on a question that somebody in this class asked, I think in a discussion somewhere earlier, which is what did you do when when committee members disagreed with each other, or if you got contradictory feedback from different committee members?
Okay, Dr. Lawrence, be honest with you and transparent, I don't recall off the top of my head that happening. So I'm either really lucky or very fortunate, because I've heard horror stories. I mean, everyone on the call has probably heard that at one point. I'm trying to right now. I'll just tell you that probably the closest thing that comes to that, if I had to guess, was, I know one. I just thought of one. Okay, so Dr. Daniel Smith was my methodologist. And in my qualitative study, Dr. Mall strongly suggested that I use a quantitative instrument as part of my data source, which I did. It was a survey scale. And Dr. Smith frowned upon that. He did not like that. And I take that back. I'm going a little too far. I don't know if he didn't like it. I should just say that he questioned it. He asked Dr. Mall, why are we using a quantitative study when this is a qualitative study? And Dr. Mall, as you know how she is, she basically said, well, Daniel, it's because, and she went into explaining that, for example, in my case, there's a citation, Sandalowski, who is like the queen of using quantitative instruments in qualitative studies. And I used her a lot in my study and explained and justified why it is fruitful, so to speak, or why it is relevant or appropriate. And so when that happened, I guess I was lucky that my chair kind of defended that on my behalf, because it was her idea. I mean, it wasn't there's a lot of this dissertation I'm not going to take credit for. A lot of it was Dr. Mall's influence, and then just kind of directing me, do it that way, and which again, I'm very grateful for. But I guess the other thing that I went through, as close as being freaked out about a month and a half, 2 months ago, I'm sorry. Yeah, probably mid-March, when I was getting close to the finish line, getting ready for my dissertation defense, my content expert had to leave. Dr. Paula Thompson, who was with GCU, she had to leave, and that was it. She just said, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to be able to be part of the final part of this dissertation, that including the defense or the final part of the paper going to formatting. And I freaked out. I just kind of said, what do I do now? Oh my God. And I called Dr. Mall immediately. I said, my content expert, we just lost her. And I have no idea what to do. Does that mean I have to start? I was really scared that this is have to start over. But thankfully, they were able to bring another content expert in. It was actually my first residency instructor, Dr. Kay Hansen, who said, I'll do it. And I was so lucky. I was like, thank you so much. I was really grateful for that. And I keep using the word lucky. I honestly do feel like in my case, I was just very fortunate for timing, that I was just in the right place on a lot of these things. So I think that plays a big part of it, is timing, being fortunate, and just being at the right place on a lot of these, places in your journey. That's probably not a good answer to, what people were probably looking for. I'm just thinking about that, like if a chair and a methodologist, because I've heard those horror stories too. I don't know. I don't know. You know the better answer on that, Dr. Lawrence, what we should do.
Possibly.
Just stay out of the line of fire, probably, right?
That's actually not a bad idea, because what the committee members are supposed to do is they're supposed to work that out. And ideally, the student never knows about it. They work it out, it depends, if one person gives you feedback and another person gives you feedback, well, there's no hiding that there's contradictory feedback. But, every now and then there's differences in philosophies, that can really play out. And usually it's behind the scenes. And if they're, doing what they're supposed to do, they will work it out behind the scenes. And disagreements, especially if they're major disagreements, should get worked out before, they face the student, so the student never really has to see it, like what goes into the sausage. Well, you don't really want to know, but most of the time, with all the committees I've worked on, that everything is very collegial. People just sort of say, well, you think this and I think that. What can we, how do we move the student forward? How do we, what do we need to do? What do we tell the student so that the student can move forward? Because everybody's got that mindset of helping the learners to move forward, rather than sort of, grinding their axe and, having a pet sort of thing that they need to push on everybody. So, but yeah, I'm sure there are horror stories, and I haven't heard a lot of them, but they've got to be out there. Probably the worst horror stories, my own dissertation. I had two chairs. I had co-chairs, and they were very opposite in orientation, in terms of how they approached research, quantitative, qualitative, positivist and, I don't know, post-positivist or, constructivist, all these different things. And so it was interesting. I sometimes got to hear their disagreements, but it never affected me, if that makes sense, because they were professionals. they always figured out how to, just move me forward. So but I know that isn't always the case. And I wasn't at GCU, I was at University of Texas, but we try to be professionals. I didn't necessarily need to answer that question. Sorry, I started waxing long. Okay, before I ask another question, I'll see who else has questions. Folks, this is your chance. So I have one more question. Taryn, if you felt like you were lacking a certain skill or knowledge, those are probably two different things, but if you felt like you were lacking something that you needed to move forward, what did you do?
Good question. I'd say during the whole process, I felt like I was lacking knowledge and the skill to get this done, because again, I just kept banging my head thinking, is this thing ever going to get done? There's so many iterations, as you know, like every week I'd get frustrated and upset because I would turn in a paper, the proposal or the dissertation draft, and be like, this is perfect. We're not going to have any issues on this. And then it would come back to me with all the reviewed track changes of comments. And I just feel like, how is this possible? So to answer that, what would I do? Lots of, in my case, praying, lots of working. I like to work out, and that's my best stress reduction. If I didn't work out, I would get really depressed or stressed. I'll be very open and transparent with everybody right now. It's okay. I'd come home crying. I'd be really upset. I had a panic attack, I think. I think that's what it was. Real close this year, like in the last 6 months, because of this whole thing. I was just really stressed out and upset and angry. And I'd come home and my heart was racing, and I felt chills. And there's no explanation. I don't think it was COVID or anything else. I got on the floor in a fetal position and I was crying, and it was because of this. I don't even remember what I was doing with this part of the dissertation, but it was just really, really frustrating for me. So I think that probably all of us go through that whole natural phase of frustration and challenge. And again, I said this on the call last time, Dr. Lawrence, in the defense, this was the hardest academic challenge my entire life. I don't think I'll ever go through anything this hard again. And I had a lot of regrets, to be honest with you. I thought, is this even smart that I even did this? Why did I do this? I don't need to do this. I'm a personal trainer. Personal trainers don't have to have a PhD. I mean, it's ridiculous. And so I had a lot of soul searching and a lot of, again, living through regret, saying, even if I pass, I'm going to regret doing this because it wasn't worth it. When it affected my health, I think that's when I really identified that there was an issue and a problem. So to resolve that, I made sure that I needed to work out. Even though I was getting up at 3 a.m. every day, I was trying to make sure that I got enough sleep. If that meant going to bed ridiculously early, like 7:30, 8 p.m., that happened a lot. And I had no social life. I did not hang out with friends. I didn't do anything fun. You don't have time. Everyone on the call knows you can't Netflix binge and do all that crap if you're, immersed in this. But it was the just repetitive, iterative process, like they call it, of just, you think you've got it, and then they send you back a million different changes, and you just throw your hands in the air like I do, and you're just like, gosh, I'll never get this thing. And looking back on it, I guess, again, just I think just keeping your eye on the ball, staying focused, just knowing that there's an end result, like a marathon. You're looking and you could see that 26 mile. You're going to get there, and it's just a matter of time. And me, I'm an impatient person. I want things done yesterday. And so in my case, I think just trying to keep my patience in check and just kind of stepping back and saying, okay, let's be realistic here. I think I remember why the panic attack happened is because I had to do an extension class. I didn't think I was going to, I thought in my third dissertation class, I was going to be done. And when I was told I had to do, because everything was done, everything was informing. And I asked my counselors, like, I'm done. Why do I have to pay another $2,000 in another 8 weeks, whatever, for this extension course? And she said, well, while they're reviewing it, you need to technically be a student. And I got so angry. I'll be honest. I was like, what? And so that's why I got so frustrated and bent out of shape. But anyway, that's water under the bridge. I'm okay. I didn't go off the edge. So, I'm okay now. But I think just hang in there. I think it's all cliche. Just hang on, and you'll see it through. Just stay focused and
But
just.
oh, I'm sorry, Tara.
Yeah, I'm done. No. I was going on. I was rambling there.
I just want to make a comment. I mean, I'm not negating anything you're saying because I'm not even at the stage you're at, and I think it's been the toughest academic challenge that I've ever encountered to date. But
Yeah.
you can say it was like I think you might have like the iterative process and you were frustrated and all that, but you're still talking to us, at least in part, because you have gone through this so efficiently and so effectively. You're like, are you not like one of the speediest people to get through it? And you're talking about it's taken so long. And even in your first, you were like, well, I would have got through that faster if I'd done. I'm thinking, what did you want to do it in 6 months? It's like you need to stop, take a breath, and realize how well you're doing. Do you know?
Thank you.
It's like,
thank you.
I think do you think that you were holding yourself to some like really high standard of I must get this done, and I must get it done by a certain time? Because by most people's standards, I think you're ahead of schedule. Are you not?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, it's Sandra.
Yeah.
Sandra. Oh, thank you. I appreciate your comment, Sandra. And no, you know what? You're 100% right. I'm like the most impatient person in the world. I'm very, and that's one of my biggest faults. I'll admit it. For when I'm personal training, I'm very goal driven and results oriented. I take my clients and I'm like, I want you to lose the weight now. I want you to get on this. And I'm my worst critic. I'm very, very hard on myself. And and that's probably why I got up at 3 a.m. every day, because I felt guilty. I was thinking, if I'm not getting up at 3 a.m. and working on this paper, then I'm not doing it. I'm being lazy. And that's not for anyone else. That's me. I was just too much on myself in that regard. So you're right, Sandra, to put things in perspective. My chair was telling me exactly what you said, because she put me on this fast track program. When she could see the frustration in me, and I'd sigh like, okay. And she's like, brighten up, Taryn, you got this. Like, we're getting through this faster than we thought. And in my head, I'm like, we are. And it just felt like this last year felt like a long time. I'll be honest with you. And that's one of the biggest.
You must have done a lot of things really well. That's all. You must have done a lot really well.
Well, thanks, Sandra. Again, I think I was very lucky, though, again, because I'll say this. Let me tell you this. My first residency, my first content expert was one of my 2 residency instructors. When she had to leave, these other residency instructors stepped in and she became my new content expert. My second residency is where I met my chair, Dr. June Mall. She pulled me aside and I talked to her and I said, I wish you were my chair. And then she said, okay. And she said, but you're going to work really hard though if you work with me. And she doesn't mess around. She was true. She said, I expect high standards. And she said, are you sure you're up for it? I said, yeah, let's do it. And then I was very lucky, Dr. Lawrence, who I had just like you in I wanted her to be my methodologist originally. And then, but they assign you your methodologist, and I was happy to get the one I did. And then I was lucky that I found out that she was my AQR. So again, I may have done some things well, but let's face it, to have those things line up perfectly. I mean, I look back and I'm like, gosh, I was very lucky, because I don't know if I would have done it that quickly had that not fallen into place the way it did. But thank you again, Sandra. That's nice of you.
We all should pat ourselves on the back every now and then. I do think that's good for our mental health. It's good for us to just remind ourselves that we're doing a hard thing. We're doing a hard thing, and, not to be too hard on ourselves. Give ourselves a little bit of grace every now and then. It's good to be driven, drive yourself, but at the same time, pat yourself on the back and, realize that you're okay. You're doing well. And everybody might have different goals. Taryn might have had a goal to finish in 6 months. I don't know. I made that up, but that may have been unrealistic. A lot of people may have a different goal, and and you may not even reach that goal. And you'll find every dissertation course, as I was talking about in a recent webinar, that you're going to set out what they call an ISP.
The reflection.
Yeah.
I forget what it stands for, but
plan, your individual success plan. That's what it was. We just call it ISP. And so at the beginning of every course, you map out the course and here's my goals. And at the end, you reflect on it. And, half the time you didn't make the goals that you set out for yourself, or you made some of them and other ones you didn't. And, it just kind of, well, pat yourself on the back for what you did and, keep going and keep plugging along. I think that the marathon is actually not a bad way to look at it, because honestly, if at the beginning of the marathon, you can't see the end, you can't see 26 miles down the road. If you could, it would be discouraging, I think. And so when I run long distances, I just take it 1 mile at a time. How fast can I do this mile? Can I do this mile without, falling over and puking? Can I, how many more miles? Just 1 mile at a time. And it is so cliche, but it works when you're running and it works when you're doing a dissertation. Chunks of work. Well, I'm going to work on this chapter. I'm going to work on this section of this chapter. I'm going to get this section of this chapter done this week. And just start checking them off.
Just pace yourself. You're right. Mm-hmm.
I have a question.
Jim.
Yeah, thank you. Taryn, can you tell me how you managed your stages of your dissertation in terms of deadlines? Like, what kind of deadline did you give yourself for chapter 3 or some of the other stages?
Oh, okay, Jim. Yeah, nice to meet you. Good question on that too. When I was working with my chair, so for example, we started with the, chapter 3 on the proposal stage. My chair was the one that was giving very aggressive deadlines, because she was telling me we would meet every Saturday on Zoom. Every week we met. And my goal was, I'm going to get this done. I'm going to knock this stuff out as much as I can. So I wish I could be more specific and tell you, oh, okay, I was going to get 25% done of chapter 3 in 2 weeks or something. So it's not as simple as that. For my case, I was just doing as much as I could, because again, as we just covered a few minutes ago, my biggest weakness probably was being too hard on myself and too overly aggressive, almost to burnout. That's probably what caused that panic attack. But I think that maybe a better way to answer that is, if you look at chapter 3, let's say, and you're in that stage and you're looking at methodology, maybe I would say each section realistically would take about a week's time. I think that's fair, maybe, because if you're looking at the introduction, for example, and you pace yourself and you say, okay, if I got this one section to do 7 days until I meet with my chair, I want to knock this out in 1 week. I'm going to break it up into sevenths, basically, or fifths, let's say. If you're doing it Monday through Friday, 20% done on each section is going to be finished by the end of this week, this calendar week. Then I think that's good, because it's just like Dr. Lawrence was saying a few minutes ago, you really have to pace yourself. That was what I did not do. I was stupid. I mean, I just jumped out there trying to sprint in the marathon, just saying, I'm going to sprint this whole marathon, and then I burned out in the 3rd mile. So I think the smarter way to do it is not work out harder, but rather work smarter in this case, and pace yourself like you suggest. I think that if you give yourself a goal of saying, like, maybe, again, I'm just throwing this out there, 1 section in 1 week, then that gives you another week to work on the next section and so forth, because I think that's reasonable. I think that's a good amount of time to where you're being able to pace yourself, because you have to keep in mind too, that you need this thing edited, because even though your chair's looking at it, you want to use Thinking Storm, for example, to submit it to them and give yourself time so they can review it and you can work on their edits, because that also needs to be factored in. So that's another thing that needs to be budgeted on time, saying, okay, I'm going to submit this to Thinking Storm and they're going to give me 2 or 3 hours of editing. I need to accommodate those 2 or 3 hours editing that they're doing that I need to, I hope that kind of helps. So I think the main thing is just pacing it through, because let me say this real quick. Chapter 3 was the hardest for me by far. Once I got past chapter 3, as you probably seen, when you look ahead, chapter 1 and 2 are almost like a review in some ways, because we wrote chapter 2 next. After you write chapter 2, chapter 1 is a very short summary of chapter 2 almost. So I felt like it was a snowball effect in that regard. Chapter 3 took me the longest. Chapter 2 maybe took me, I don't know, half the time. And then chapter 1 was real easy because we streamlined it by that point. I didn't just copy and paste what I was writing, but I was more kind of paraphrasing and maybe synthesizing new stuff into whenever I was writing a different chapter or section.
Okay.
And chapter 3, I think, is really hard in particular.
Oh, yeah,
because,
definitely.
Especially, I'm not sure if you did this the first time or when it was, but when you realized that you had to learn some stuff,
Yes.
Chapter 3 is very detailed about methods. And so, I mean, you're finding out right now in your prospectus, because this prospectus PowerPoint asks a lot of details about your methodology. And you're like, what, how many participants and how are they going to get from, here to there? And, how am I going to recruit them? And, all these details you've never thought of. Well, wait till you get to chapter 3, because then it's the same thing times 10. Well, what is this thing called thematic analysis? In your prospectus, you could just write the 6 steps that Brown and Clark outline, and you're probably good. But in your chapter 3, you have to actually know what thematic analysis is. What's a code? What's a theme? And how do you get them? And you have to explain that. So not only does the writing part take time, but the understanding, the research, the knowledge that you need to be able to write chapter 3 takes some time as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Rashmi.
I have a question. Hi, Taryn. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Rashmi.
Questions.
Yeah,
So
it's my pleasure.
you said that you gave up your social life and you didn't have time to sit and binge watch Netflix or hang out with friends. So my question to you is, was that something gradual? Was that something that happened because your chair gave you those hard deadlines that you had to work for, or did you just plan for that? And is that something we need to plan for ahead of time?
Yeah, Rashmi, in my case, for the last 3 years, I've been that way, and that's just me being hard on myself. In my case, I'm probably a really boring person because I just don't go out and do stuff. When I jumped into this doctoral thing 3 years ago, I just went ahead and said, okay, no social life. I'm just going to jump head first. That's probably why I got to this point so quickly. But no, my chair, she had high expectations, but she didn't force or tell me she did say I have high expectations and high standards. She did. And she said, so if you're going to work for me, you better give me some good work. And I told her, I said, you got it. I'm going to be the best student you ever got. And so, no, a lot of that was just me just choosing. People thought I was nuts because I'm a personal trainer and I get up and I train some people at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. So I was up before training those people. That's why I had to get up at 3 if I wanted to get at least half an hour of work done before I got ready to go out to work with some of my clients. So for me, I just did it that way. I just directed myself to get up super early, crazy early. I say 3 a.m. There were sometimes 2 a.m., 2:30 a.m. I call them like news anchor hours, because I have a friend who's on the news and she says that that's her hour. She's like, you're not supposed to be getting up that early. But then on the flip side, I made sure that I was in bed by 7:30, 8 o'clock because I needed at least, that 6-7 hours of sleep to function and just be able to work. Because I see like 12 people a day usually. I work Monday through Saturday on average, seeing about 10 to 12 people every day that I train. So that's a lot of hours. And that's the only way that it works is because I know that all of us on this call are probably working and we've got to have some kind of life. And there's a lot of events that I miss. I couldn't go to weddings. I mean, COVID certainly impacted a lot of us, but I didn't go to people's birthday parties and things like that just because I just thought, I can't. I don't have the time. I didn't go on vacations. I just sacrificed all that to the side. And I just put this first because I wanted to get it done as soon as possible. To back up for a second, that's how I've always been, though, because I graduated my undergraduate college degree at the age of 20 because I just worked through summers and took full loaded courses. So at age 20, I finished my bachelor's degree. And then I did a fast track accelerated program for my MBA in a year and a half. So I've always probably been that way where I just wanted to get it done because I'm just, wanted to get it over with, basically.
But interestingly, at the same time, you still work out. So you still are having some time for yourself. I think you're still illustrating that whatever you need to keep yourself sane, you do. And so if binge watching every now and then keeps you sane, then you do it. You try to limit it so it doesn't get out of control. Or if going to the birthday parties every now and then, whatever it is that keeps you sane and keeps you recharged, you do it, and Taryn worked out and said, well, for this period of time, I don't really need much of a social life. That's okay. But other people might be different.
Yeah, you're right, Dr. Lawrence. I had the working out for me was just my therapy, my stress relief. I didn't do it for any other reason, just to keep sane, just to get in a better mood and not be, because if I didn't work out, I was just grumpy. and mad and angry because, just wasn't able to build up the endorphins and burn off the stress and all that. So you're right. If it's Netflix binge watching or hanging out with friends, I strongly recommend, like Dr. Lawrence said, get those allotted times in and do it, whatever works best for your own sake, for your mental therapy or what have you. Very, very true. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
My pleasure, Rashmi. Thank you.
Well, we have 5 minutes left. Who else has a question?
Hi, I just want to know, are you willing to share your contact information just in case we have questions along the way?
Yeah. Hi, is this Shamika?
It is, yes.
Hi, nice to meet you, Shamika. My pleasure. Absolutely. I'm a big networker. I love to network. So please, I would be my pleasure to do so. I think probably the quickest, easiest way to find me is if you just Google my business name, which is Go Taryn. So it's the word go, G-O, and then first name Taryn, T-A-R-R-Y-N. Go Taryn, all is one word. If you Google that, you'll probably see my website. You'll probably see my LinkedIn, social media. I'm on like every platform you could think of. And my website's real easy. It's just gotaryn.com. So I'd love to, please. Yeah. Shoot me a text, email, whatever. And I'd love to contact and network with all of you. That'd be great.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Yeah.
I found you.
I think, Dr. Lawrence, you and I are connected together on LinkedIn too, if I'm not mistaken.
Maybe, probably. I don't use LinkedIn that often, so I don't actually recall who I'm connected to on LinkedIn, but that's a definite possibility.
And it's funny, I have 5,000 friends on Facebook. I guess that's the maximum. I don't even use it. I only do it for branding purposes. So I just put like all my video blogs and all my other fun stuff on my social media, and it just goes goes out there. So
I just wrote the URL in the chat.
Oh, cool. Okay, I saw something pop up. Hey,
yep.
Okay. That's a new function, isn't it? Dr. Mall was telling me about that. I didn't know anything about that you can do that.
At the chat?
Yeah, it was new to me. I mean, last week I just, there was an update and Dr. Mall said, look at this. And she was chatting and I didn't know you could do that. So again, I'm really behind the 8 ball on Zoom, to be honest with you. So.
Well, it's a good thing. Anyway, so it's there if anybody wants to click on it in the next, couple minutes before we sign off. Other questions?
Well, I'll just say this. Thanks, Dr. Lawrence. Thanks, everybody, for letting me be on the call. I wish you all the best of luck, everyone. You're going to do it. You'll be there. And I'll see you all at the finish line, cheering you on.
Excellent. Well, thanks for your kind words, Taryn. And, thanks for all the advice. And we really appreciate it. And thanks for your time. Definitely. And your insights and your honesty, and just sort of laying it all out there and letting us see the good, the bad, and the ugly, so we definitely appreciate that.
That was my pleasure. This is a lot of fun. Thank you so much again.
Very much.
Okay, everyone, I'll let you go and I will see you all in the classroom. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.